question. But thanks everybody for being here. I wanted to share this article, and then also I'll share and pull up another document with you and send that to you or let you download it. That is kind of an Excel version of some questions that we use to evaluate opportunities, and then we tried to make questions for each one of these badges in this HBR article. So I know you haven't probably had a lot of time to go through the article, but I'll just show you the pictures because that's what's usually helpful for me. The article talks a lot about the what they call the value pyramid, and how you can look at different elements of value for opportunities that you're working on in your business or in your work, or if you're looking to create a new product. So it goes through these different stages, so you can see them: social impact, life-changing, emotional, and then functional. And each one of these you can kind of use to say, okay, where does my current product or my current offering fall or check these boxes? Spencer, it might be interesting just to have you share a little bit of what you were talking about in terms of you're in a project right now and you keep getting asked about or told that you should use different criteria to look at a project. Do you mind just sharing a little bit of the thinking behind kind of those questions and how you're looking at this, and how you would use some of these badges in an assessment for what you're doing?
Absolutely. So I think everybody, I've spoken with pretty much everybody about the youth entrepreneurship platform concept that I've been working on. And when I first started, when the idea first came up, it was, I've got these materials and I've got a kid and I'm trying to figure out how she can do something to learn a little bit of entrepreneurship. And so it was definitely down in the functional kind of level, right? Like, oh, she can make some money. This is it reduces some of the effort and avoids some of the hassle. And there's some, and I was just thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. And then as I started having conversations and started thinking a lot more about it, writing into it and interacting with people, and people actually ended up starting to buy the initial kind of beta kits. I realized that so much more of this was around, he kind of started to move up level and has started to have conversations with as I've talked with experts. They're like, you need to start considering these pieces and these things. And so I think it's it's actually made it so much easier for me to start really seeing how the product should function when I start considering some of these other, is it providing hope, or how does it provide hope? And I was just mentioning that last night I was speaking with a social worker who works with middle school kids and Title I schools, because part of what I've wanted to do with this project is really to help kids who are in, who are maybe in trapped within kind of poverty, or to be able to lift themselves out of that, to start to gain confidence and build momentum. And she just pointed out that the motivations that are for that group are completely different than they are for, say, your typical middle class kid, who they said the motivations are just totally different. And I hadn't even considered that. But as we started talking into it, I realized that it meant that I'm just going to have to, as I go and validate this, it's going to change prioritization on certain features that were already kind of designed to be a part of it, but just how we communicate those and where they come, even in the, as we're building out the platform. So super fascinating. So when I saw this article come through, it totally resonates right with what I'm thinking about right now. So
I appreciate that, Spencer. That's kind of exactly what I wanted to touch on today, was how, as you're going through that process, how you can use some of these different items to think about the value proposition that you're creating or sharing with your customers. So in the article, it talks about how you can, the more of these that you get, the more obviously valuable it is to the customer. And so trying to identify ways that your product or offering can check more of these boxes is one way to think about your value proposition. So there are a lot of different frameworks that you can look at, like the gains and pains canvas that is used oftentimes with the business model canvas. This is just one other framework to start thinking about and saying, okay, how does my product specifically save time, simplify somebody's lives? Or as you move up this pyramid, it becomes more emotional and less tangible, I guess, in terms of a product, but how it's used and how it creates more of that emotional tie as well. So a couple of things that I did want to draw out and talk about, and I want to have some of the group share their thoughts and how they're doing this. I mean, we've talked with Karthik before about his product and how I would love to hear, Karthik, how this might impact how you're looking at the kits you're creating. And then also Sid with what you're doing, and Maxwell, how you and the team at Revelry look at these types of things while you're assessing deals. But before we jump into kind of sharing that, I want to share the tool that we put together to do this as well. And as I often do, I try and simplify things or make them much more quantitative in my engineering brain. And so I put together this list. Initially, the first, maybe 60 lines of this spreadsheet are very kind of quantifiable questions about a product or an opportunity. And I use these here, maybe that'll help. We've used these in the past to do kind of a gut check on opportunities and deals coming into us. They have varying impact or weight, but we made them, or we tried to make them binary in the answer, because this is the first pass for us. It's our sniff test of just saying, okay, let's level set with an opportunity and see where it lands on all of these. And not all of them are deal killers, but they're more informative to us to say, okay, where do we need to spend time in the next 10 hours of doing our assessment versus the first hour. So the prioritization kind of topics are here in the first column. And we just go through these and say, okay, are they or are they not? Like, do we have a problem solution fit validation complete on this? If so, we give it a 1. And then we're able to kind of filter this data or look at this information and say, okay, are there any deal killers here? I mean, is it something that just, if we can't identify a customer problem, like if this isn't validated, then it's a deal killer for us. We have some much more subjective in here, like, are people that we're working with goobers? Like, do we just not want to work with them? So it is very subjective in terms of saying, yeah, we gotta start going with our gut on some of these. Some of these with numbers in them, it's kind of choose your own number. Like, what is the opportunity you're looking for? Is $100 million total addressable market something that you're actually needing, or are you okay with a $10 million total addressable because you want to build a lifestyle recurring revenue company that just lasts? So by putting this all down, though, you're able to kind of assess, at least we're able to assess much more quickly where we need to spend time doing more research or kind of bucketing our opportunities. We then went into the HBR article, and that's what these questions are. We also tried to make these binary, and it's difficult to, sometimes it's difficult to make questions a really true and good binary outcome, because it's like, oh, was it bootstrapped or not? Well, kind of, but maybe not a little bit. I mean, they put some money in, but then didn't on others. So figuring out a way to word these questions in that pyramid, these are all of those circles from the previous HBR article. and we tried to make it binary as well as give an example. These are definitely not perfect, but it does allow you to see how many of these boxes you check, from the functional down to the social impact and self-transcendence. So I will, let's see. I'll stop sharing. Well, no, I think I can do the chat. I'm going to upload this document, this Excel sheet to the chat, just in case you want to edit it or otherwise. Let's see, there we go. And make it your own. But would love to now hear from all of you on some thoughts about the pyramid in the article, all of those badges, or things that you would add to your list of questions.
Sorry, Taylor, quick question. Where did you add this link? Sorry. Right,
I'm
okay,
putting
just
it
in the chat.
I just put it in the chat.
Got it.
Did everybody see that and get it?
Yep.
Cool.
For some
So,
reason, I haven't seen it in the chat.
you don't see it in the chat?
Nope.
I don't know what to do.
I do.
Yeah, I see it there, and I've already downloaded it too.
That's so weird. If someone can send it to me, that'd be great. Thank you.
I can send it to you, Holly, on LinkedIn if you want.
Cool. That's strange. I don't know why that would be the case, Hallie. But
Maybe Zoom's on Facebook servers.
ooh, zing. Also, I don't know if it has to do with different versions of Zoom either. Like, I know that sometimes when Zoom comes out with a different version, some functionality becomes less available. But I would love to now have a discussion, and maybe what I could do is also just edit this document as we're going, and I can send it out to everyone. But if you have ideas on additional ways that you assess or how you would use a document like this, I would love to hear and open up the discussion to all of you. Any comments so far?
I could see this being an awesome way to test marketing messages, right? So come up with a marketing message for each line that you could see your product kind of fitting in. So in my case, right, I've got a lot of functional things with my kits, but also there's some like we're marketing to students who are trying to get PhDs, right? So maybe we market in that angle. Hey, are you trying to finish your PhD? Use our kit, get there faster. So that's kind of the life-changing value, self-actualization, that one badge, right? So similarly, you could kind of churn out different marketing messages and test them and see, hey, you know, which one really resonates with our audience and which gets them to click on our ad the most. I could see that working.
That's a great idea.
I know this is a different way of thinking about it, but the social impact value, when it says self-transcendence, does it serve the customer's personal growth and motives? That last line really speaks to me. But it also is because of a very self-serving question. We're always saying, what is the customer's pain? And on the other hand, let's start from our story of what is our pain. So the question of social impact value is not only self-transcendence, but also what's in it for me? Why do I care so much about this project? What passion does this find and meet for myself to answer that no one else can? And that is the driving force of any number of our careers and motives in life. And that's often where people, when talking about a pitch or a delivery, you start with what's your pain? Why did you make this your passion and go all in, right, Taylor?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can add that question, and that makes it social impact value, the value added trust building as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. As any of you have gone through, like with your products or with your projects, has it been more organic, or have you been using an objective tool or grading system to help figure out what you're working on? And I'm just thinking, like, Casey, with what you've been working on in your helmet, to identify different features that you're adding or ways of promoting it. Have you thought about the things like this, or has it been much more organic in the way that you're looking at your product development or solution development?
I've done both. One of them is I kind of started with, the customer mentality is like, if I was a customer buying this, what would I want to see? Because for me, I know what I want. And that's kind of how I actually started this project. But then like doing some beta testing was very, very good at getting feedback from the customer that way. And then I could rank, okay, out of 30 feedbacks, 9 of them had this comment and 15 of them had this and 3 had this. And that helped to like prioritize how important are these features actually to people? Because ones that like, I'm talking to people and sometimes they like have this, like, you really need to do this, but that's only one person out of 30, but they come across as like very convincing, where 15 people out of 30 just mention in a survey result, this would be a nice feature. I take that to be even more, more speaking to like what is needed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think being able to quantify those, we definitely quantify market signal when we're doing our primary research with customers and try and figure out how best to judge, are they lukewarm? Are they excited? Are they just screaming for our product? Or do they not want it at all? Do they not see any benefit? So I think some of those are in the functional value, where we're looking at different benefits and saying, okay, people are buying benefits rather than features. So what benefits are we actually providing? And I think the further you go up in the pyramid, the benefits become maybe a little bit less tangible, but more, sometimes stronger, I guess, because they are more emotional or passion driven or otherwise.
Right. And I think, from what I've seen too, is like the less, I guess the more transparent the benefit is, the more of an emotional connection it becomes, because it's satisfying like an inner need rather than like using a function to, a direct function. And I think that's where like the real value is in doing any product or any service, really, is that emotional connection of like, you're satisfying a need that I have that's high up.
Hey, Taylor, I got a question about the pyramid real quick. And what Spencer was talking about, his realization of different classes of people, how their selections are going to be different. Is it possible to take that pyramid and go from 2-dimensional and put it 3-dimensional, so that the profile according to the social standing and desire of build and growth would be behind that, so that there would be options to how the pyramid would be then implemented to each different group according to the input into that?
Actually, I'd plus that, Alan, to suggest like a 3D chess game.
Yeah.
We know, those Star Trek kinds of chess games, thinking of this as multidimensional and not just as a 2D or flat or 3D, but also consider the personal transitions and the timeline factors, because what's the deliverable for a kid versus an adult versus an elder, the priorities can shift as well. And when looking at the project in terms of customer relativity and relevance, it also matters greatly. So that if we're going to do weighting of the factors rather than a simple menu like this is sort of like the pyramid food chart, right? And we all know how we've had to modify what's on the plate. These are just ingredients. And we haven't really answered to how does the final dish taste from looking at a menu on this flat piece of paper.
Yeah, those are great comments. I think adding dimensions to this, definitely. I mean, I think you could make this much more dimensional with time or with different customers. I mean, Karthik, you said ideal customer profile, being able to match that to some of these elements are really interesting. I think one of the things that we push for is also simplification. So making it not just like, I think having complexity is good, and that would get you a lot of rich information and data. I think also using this as a tool in its most simple form, that's why we tried to boil it down to a binary. I mean, those questions that we put around this, that whole sheet, I think there's 60 plus questions, 65 questions on it. I try and have our analysts be able to answer those questions in an hour, maybe 90 minutes at most. But the faster they can do it, the better at the initial outset. And because it will identify, okay, where do we need to dive in deeper to do more analysis and more development? Because some of the boxes are already checked and it's just like a no-brainer. So we'll typically start more simple and then maybe start adding complexity as it passes different stage gates. Maxwell, how do you look at this at Revelry in terms of like identifying projects that you want to bring in or start? Is this type of thing part of your assessment?
I have a couple thoughts. Hallie, I heard you say something. Go ahead before you lose it.
Thank you, Maxwell. I have a particular example that I'm just putting out there because I would love someone in the world to help me answer to the need. My dad is going on 96, pushing a walker that is sort of like pushing a bobsled on a bed of gravel instead of snow. Gives you an idea of how people are trying to navigate city streets. And it's also very much apparent in third world nations. As a rehab doctor, I think about people who took the broken hang glider frame and make it into a quickie wheelchair, transforming wheelchair business for the rest of the world. And people are trying to figure out all these things. On a city bus today, seeing someone take a kid in one arm and fold up a stroller and stow it under a seat. We need to have working equipment that is equally easy for anyone to negotiate and navigate as an elder. And I would love, as a rehab doctor, to find the designers and the industrial engineers who can help to really manufacture transforming products, because everyone who uses a curb cut on a sidewalk knows how much it makes a difference, whether it's skateboard or in a wheelchair. So that's an example right there of how life-changing self-transformation, pushing someone in a wheelchair. If you've done it for 50 feet, you've not done it for a mile, your wrist and your shoulders start hurting also. We need to have equipment that all of us can benefit from. And that's where function, emotion, life-changing, and self-transcendence meet every single check mark on this list for me.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I've been thinking about that space as there's a family house is going on, and mobility is a symptom of that, and how the existing tools or resources are not one size fits all. In regards to your question, I think the way that I think about this is I really focus on functional. It's like, and I guess Casey was asking me what we do in our breakout, and I framed it as like solve problems, meet objectives and priorities. If you can articulate like the pain points that you're trying to address, then typically, at least like in my reflection based on having not read it and just kind of listening and perusing this article, like I'm focused on functional things. Like, what's the problem you have? how can I save you time, make your life easier, reduce your risk, organize your life, connect you with things. The emotional and the sorry, now I'm trying to find the doc. Can you just scroll up slightly? The emotional, life-changing, and social impact, right, to me are the packaging of the problem or of the solution after it's been identified. But the like functional adding value piece is where I try and hone in on. So a lot of my thinking in this is not coming from the investing we're doing and more just speaking with people trying to build things. It's you don't need to design your skateboard. You just need to build your skateboard, which gets you from A to B and solves that immediate problem. From there, once you've done that, you can learn how it's emotionally impacting your people, how it's changing their lives, making their jobs better. And if opportunity arises, how it allows to that allows them to arrive at a whole nother level. So, I think in regards to your checklist, right, I think those are all relevant, and to Karthik's point, like maybe actually fit in different business units at different times. But from where I sit and kind of reflect on this, it's, can you make someone's life better in a small way by simply going after a very specific pain point and providing a solution to that very specific pain point?
Yeah, that's great thinking. I appreciate that. In terms of kind of order of how you think about things, that's helpful too. Also, it probably, if you wanted to take it one more step complexity wise, this table here, these questions, you could weight these. And so maybe what you're talking about, Maxwell, is some sort of weighting system about initially it's got to check functional value and then move up the pyramid to emotional, life-changing, and social.
And that kind of goes with Maslow's structure of a pyramid too. Like if you don't meet the foundation, you can't increase up the ladder. Maybe this is maybe just throwing this out there, thought experimenty, is like perhaps this is less about the solution and more about the problem. Can you describe the problem through like, is it a functional, emotional, life-changing, or social impact problem? In theory, social impact should have all the other three layers, but like, is the problem something that leads to people saving time? Is the problem something that, if solved, would simplify someone's life? Is the problem something that would make more money? And so approaching it problem versus solution driven might be a way to get more clarity of the potential value of someone's imagined solution. It seems to fit as I talk about it and express this out loud for the first time, but probably needs a little bit more playing with to really see if it's worth leaning into.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with spin selling. Have any of you guys heard of this? No, really? So I used to be in marketing and sales, right? So spin is one framework for how you sell a product. So initially you ask your customer, hey, what is the situation that you're in? That's the S part. Then what problems do you run into in your current work, right? That's your P. Then the I is, what's the impact of what does the problem do to you? Like, what's the effect of it? What's the impact of it on you? And then finally, there's the end part, which is the needs payoff. Like, okay, let's say you solve this problem. How would it affect your life, right? So I think that's going with what Max is saying. You start with this list to identify what are the possible ways that your customer is running into problems, and it fits into one of these nice buckets. And this is a nice way to kind of learn then how do you solve their problems and what's the value that you provide to them at the end in this kind of methodology. So I like this pyramid from the marketing perspective as well as from the sales perspective. It's really nice. So, thanks, Taylor.
Karthik, one of the things that I like about what you're saying, bridging to Spencer also, the phrase that connects for me is universal access, right? If we have a curb cut, everyone benefits, whether they're pushing a stroller or a walker. Everyone benefits from having access to a refrigerator door that opens in a way that they can also reach for an item. We don't need to make it a complex thing that dovetails so much to that niche market, because sometimes it's good to have a niche that we key in on, and sometimes it's valuable to make something so available and transparent that everyone doesn't need to think about whether they benefit, because it's so self-evident and readily available. So we need to be also considering how much do we fine-tune a message versus broaden its appeal for everyone to say, yes, I am included in that bunch. The Venn diagram of inclusion or exclusion and exclusivity.
I kind of feel like every product that is on Kickstarter these days, or, you know, like all these innovations, like you've seen a lot of really successful products that the function was always there, a backpack, a bag, but the idea that you're somehow answering something from a higher level, right? Moving beyond the functional, that's where the money's made. And again, I don't know if that's, you think of that as marketing or if you think of that as product design, right? But that's where there's always more opportunity.
Yeah, one thing I like about this document, and this is going to be one of those documents I like to call the core document, which is if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out and you're kind of mapping your product offering, this is a fantastic document to begin to value your venture, right? And to begin to map out that venture. What's very cool about this, Taylor, is that it actually goes one step further. It's such a good document. And I honestly, I can only say it just from like the high level I've seen it. I'm going to tear this apart later today. It's be fun. It's going to be a pen and a lot of notes. But from what I can tell, this is one of those documents that evolves into your culture in the sense of now we're going out and we've got our product established, we got it built. Now we need to sell it, right? And so now we're building our sales. And I hear this, everyone's saying pain, benefit, right? Those are all typical terms that you're going to hear that are going to typically be attached to selling a product. And this is going to help you discover what levels of the different pains you're solving and the benefits you're bringing to the table. What level do they fall in? Are they social impact? Are they life-changing? And they also help you begin to structure, you know, how important it is. So when you're doing pain discovery or real kind of what Karthik was talking about, really kind of diving in and helping identify problems, you're going to be able to identify what levels people's pain are going to be on. And so that's really cool about this. Not only can you take this from validation in the beginning of your venture, but it will actually be able to evolve and help you track in different areas into sales and marketing. You know, when you're looking at your marketing, your brand messaging, it's all going to tie together. Definitely a great document, very insightful.
Cool. Appreciate all that input. I've been taking a few notes here. I really like that idea, Taylor, being able to use these different levels as topic kind of separators in discussions within your teams. Like being able to say, yeah, are we talking about functional, emotional, life-changing, or social within a discussion? So I think that could really help in, like what you're saying, drive some of the culture of your teams. I'll save this document and also send it out to everyone. So Hallie, I don't know why you're not getting my emails or seeing the chats, but I'll just email the same list of registrants to share this as well. And if you don't get it, let me know. I'll try and figure out how to post things on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, it's my today, not anyone else's. Thanks, Taylor, for sending me, Taylor Bennett sending me the LinkedIn earlier. Just to say, when we talk about a pyramid, just remember in 3D modeling, a pyramid is also known as a tetrahedron, and it's a square base like the pyramids at Giza. So pyramid is also a multi-dimensional construct, not a flat piece of paper. So we don't need to change the word. We just need to change the dimension and development. And that is the nugget of what we're talking about now.
I love it. That's a great way to think about it. One of my co-founders, Peter, always talks about how you can go from a line to a square and then to a 3D cube in your thinking. So just another way of kind of supporting what you're talking about there, Hallie. Thanks. Well, I think we're at time for today, so really appreciate the discussion. Hopefully this was helpful. I'll send out this information on LinkedIn as well as email, but really appreciate everybody coming, and see you next week. We'll have Katie from Assure talking to us about fundraising and how she made the decision on when to fundraise. So thanks all. We'll see you next week.